The Traveler and I made one each. Here, have a taste while it's still warm.
Thank you. Don't mind if I do.
What is it? What does that face mean?
This flavor... I've tasted it before. Apologies. Xiangling, Traveler, thank you both. This is everything I had hoped it would be. It tastes wonderful and... quite amazingly, somehow it took me right back to my childhood, when my grandfather was still around.
Really? That's awesome! I didn't have a chance to fully explain before. In fact, when Master had filled in the missing parts of the recipe for me, I realized that I already knew how to make this dish. You already knew? You mean you were able to make this without ever seeing the recipe? Uh-huh. My dad taught me how to make it. Wait, but isn't this dish from Kuching's grandpa's notes, though?
About that. I do not believe that this recipe was my grandfather's creation. My grandfather was a well-known real estate tycoon in Liyue, and also a scholar. He was an avid collector of old books and was quite knowledgeable on many of Liyue's customs and traditions that are no longer practiced. As a child, I used to spend a lot of time with him in his study. We'd read the classics together, then debate how much of it was actually genuine, and whether Rex Lapis was real or not. He used to say, books are just a bridge that bring us a little closer to history. It's up to those of us in later generations to ask these questions, search for the answers, and decide what they mean. Since then, my grandfather has passed on, and I've grown up to become a Qixing. My views on Rex Lapis have changed in this time too, from myth to reality. For me, the name Rex Lapis is inextricably wound up with memories of my grandfather. Whenever I see his name written down, it always reminds me of sitting in my grandfather's study, seeing all of his notes. As I said earlier, this recipe came from those same notes. It's an ancient dish that he was trying to restore to its original form. But, unfortunately, without the full recipe, he never quite succeeded. Still, each time he tried cooking it, he'd always get me to have a taste while it was still warm. The memories. This really is the taste of my childhood.
Ancient dish? Are cornbread buns really that old? Well, at least in my family it is. My dad learned how to make it from his dad, and supposedly it's been passed down that way for generations. We call them chili mince cornbread buns. They're a traditional folk food snack, easy to pack up and take with you on the road. So they're the perfect thing to eat on the go. La la la. Seeing Guoba just reminded me of something. I actually made this dish on the day I first met Guoba.
How did you first meet?
It was in a cave in the mountains. I ducked inside to get out of the rain and saw an offering table in there, so I put the cornbread buns I'd brought with me on it. Then I ended up falling asleep, and when I woke up, I found out that Guoba had eaten every last one. Guoba followed me around ever since. We're practically family now. Hold up! Stop the conversation! Look! The stone! It burst open!
It's...
Guoba? What are you... What? Mara?
Ah, I see the chili mince cornbread buns have been served.
Master! Granny, look! The stove god statue looks just like Guoba!
Oh, indeed it does. After all, Guoba is the deity you've been searching for. God of the stove.
Guoba is a god?
You asked me if a sufficiently festive atmosphere would be enough to reawaken the stove god. And my answer is this. Yes. And no. The stove god has always been a deity with great affection for the people, and who acts in response to their desires. To him, the heart's passions and the heart's desires are not the same thing. Passion can be a technique, a skill, something derived from experience. But desires, they are deeper, more innate. They are the heart strength in its purest form. Masterful chefs is wonderfully exciting, but it is more an exercise of passion than of desire, and passion alone will not suffice to reawaken the stove god from his deep slumber. But just now, when Kuching ate this dish she had longed for, a deeply held desire was fulfilled. As well as receiving an answer to her question, she also gained something much more precious. A moment of poignant nostalgia so vivid, it felt like she was right there alongside her grandfather. The enormous power unleashed by the fulfillment of this desire resonated with the stove god's statue, and caused it to manifest once more the form it took in the past. Of course, the stove god himself is not contained within the statue. The true stove god has been here with us all along. How does it feel, seeing a statue of yourself from your glory days? Look at him. Still so majestic.
Glory days? Wait, what happened? Did Guoba used to be different from now?
Oh, yes. Back in his day, your Guoba was once the patron god of the soil. But all the wisdom and power he had then, he has since surrendered to the soil itself.
A god surrendering their power to the soil. I have heard this turn of phrase before, but what does it mean?
The kinds of trials and tribulations that a land can face are far more than you could imagine. Droughts, floods, torrential rain, hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, fires, and plagues. The threat of disaster will never fully disappear from Liyue. Even woes that have never been faced before in history will come to pass in the future. Such things affect you mortals far more than we Adepti, with our immortal forms. He once walked with you over the barren plains until you arrived at last at the harbor. He joined you in building your dwellings and lighting the stoves. It was his hand that lit the very first street lamp of Liyue and brought the aroma of cooked food into every household in the land. You mortals no longer remember him, but back in the age when you did, he was the closest of all the Adepti to the common folk.